Welcome to this presentation on the preliminary research findings for experiential transformation therapy. After a brief description of experiential transformation, I'll walk you through the findings, potential implications, and future research opportunities. Experiential transformation is a transdiagnostic, non-pathologizing, and trauma-informed process of restructuring or transforming human experiences through directed internal exploration supported by bilateral stimulation. This results in symptomatic resolution and translation into a meaningful narrative and action plan. Experiential transformation is based on the theory of human experiencing, which describes how an individual interacts with the environment through relation, integration, and translation. This therapeutic procedure operationalizes the abstract principles of the theoretical structure. Parts of the therapeutic procedure utilized in this study are a derivative of well-validated techniques from current trauma modalities. Theoretical substruction revealed connections between the conceptual and operational aspects of these modalities. Theoretical derivation and synthesis strategies were utilized to extract and construct the semantics of guided internal exploration and the incorporation of bilateral stimulation techniques. Derived concepts and their propositional basis were connected back to the principles of the theory of human experiencing. The ultimate product of this work was the development of a protocolized set of semantics that aimed to guide the internally oriented exploration of a distressing experience. This was designed to be trauma-informed and primarily for the processing of traumatic experiences. The steps in the protocol are supported by bilateral stimulation to augment processing, desensitization, internally oriented exploration, present moment awareness, and self-compassion. This procedure was developed to be implemented in a time-efficient manner, with the ability to be fully implemented in a single 45-minute session. The aims of this study were to demonstrate immediate and sustained efficacy, to evaluate tolerability, to examine time considerations, to determine future directions of study, and to contribute to the body of traumatology research. This study was designed as a retrospective observational study at a single U.S.-based outpatient psychiatry practice. A standardized assessment tool was developed and used for the purpose of pre-session, post-session, and follow-up evaluation of subjective units of distress, or SUDs, and emotional burden, or EB. Participants engaged in a single session of ETT with pre- and post-intervention measures. At 2 to 4 week follow-up, participants were re-evaluated. These are the elements of the assessment tool utilized in this study. Emotional burden was defined as the cumulative number of words listed here. Subjective units of distress was determined using the 0 to 10 scale on the right. Participants meeting the following criteria were included in the study. 1. An age of 18 or older. 2. An active diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder as defined by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. 3. The completion of 1 session of experiential transformation therapy. And 4. Reporting on the Experiential Transformation Survey with SUD and EB measures all 3 times, pre-session, post-session, and 2 to 4 week follow-up. Those who did not meet these criteria were excluded from the study. Descriptive statistics, paired t-tests, and Cohen's d were used to analyze pre-session and post-session data to evaluate the significance of findings. Between July 2024 and October 2024, 30 participants experienced an average 74% reduction in distress following 1 session. This was amplified by the time of follow-up with a total 94% reduction. There was also an average 85% reduction in emotional burden by the end of one session. This was amplified by the time of follow-up assessment with an average 97.7% reduction in emotional burden. These findings suggest that experiential transformation therapy has a significant and immediate impact on reducing distress and emotional burden in adults with PTSD. Furthermore, these effects are sustained over time, as demonstrated by the follow-up assessments. In this table, you can see some of the key variables and results from paired t-tests and Cohen's d. In all areas, the derived p-values were less than 0.001, which was under the cutoff for statistically significant, or 0.05. The effect size for distress reduction immediately following sessions was 5.19 and amplified to 6.60 at 2 to 4 week follow-up. The effect size for emotional burden reduction immediately following sessions was 2.28 and amplified to 2.76 at 2 to 4 week follow-up. These effect sizes are large when compared to standardized cutoffs, where a small effect size is around 0.2, a medium effect size is around 0.5, and a large effect size is greater than 0.8. The minimum session duration was 24 minutes, and the maximum session duration was 56 minutes, with an average of approximately 34 minutes with a standard deviation of 7.75 minutes. These findings suggest that experiential transformation therapy is a time-efficient psychotherapeutic procedure for the treatment of trauma. Based on the mean and standard deviation, a total of 41.62 minutes, experiential transformation therapy can be routinely completed within a 45-minute session. There were only 2 cases that extended beyond 45 minutes, representing only 6% of the study population. All participants completed the full session of experiential transformation therapy, and all patients sustained follow-up. Therefore, the dropout rate is 0 in the context of this study. Aside from mild psychological distress associated with discussing elements of the traumatic experience, no adverse events were identified. Outside of a general description of the traumatic experience, participants were not required to verbalize the details of their traumatic experience throughout the procedure. These findings suggest that experiential transformation therapy is a well-tolerated psychotherapeutic treatment for trauma. Experiential transformation therapy has a significant and immediate impact on reducing distress and emotional burden in adults with post-traumatic stress disorder. These effects are sustained over time, as demonstrated by the 2 to 4 week follow-up assessments. The large effect sizes in both the distress and emotional burden reductions highlights the potential efficacy of experiential transformation therapy as a short-term intervention for PTSD-related symptoms. This is particularly noteworthy given that the average session duration is just over 30 minutes, making ETT a time-efficient treatment option. This frees up time to devote to the holistic plan of care that includes other psychotherapeutic strategies, nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, lifestyle modification, and advanced laboratory and diagnostic testing to address the complexity of traumatic experiences. As it is being increasingly recognized, trauma is not an event, rather it's a biopsychosocial response that's sustained over time. This sustained response and subsequent physiological, psychological, and spiritual imbalances necessitates a holistic plan of care. There are several noteworthy limitations and associated directions for further research identified by this study. The sample size was only 30, which limits the generalizability of these findings. Studies with larger sample sizes may enhance the generalizability of findings. Standardized PTSD measurement, such as the PTSD checklist or PCL-5, was not utilized in this study and would clarify the direct impact ETT has on PTSD as conventionally defined by the DSM. A randomized control trial design would enhance the methodologic rigor of evaluating this approach. This study focused on a single session of experiential transformation therapy. Cumulative effects of multiple sessions needs to be measured. Longer-term studies are needed to evaluate the sustained effectiveness of experiential transformation therapy beyond 2 to 4 weeks. Studies comparing experiential transformation therapy to frontline trauma modalities, such as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, cognitive processing therapy, and prolonged exposure, are needed. Finally, the subpopulation focus was trauma, and it would benefit the body of research outside of traumatology to conduct studies evaluating experiential transformation therapy in the context of other conditions. These findings were compiled into a manuscript with the provisional title, The Immediate and Sustained Effects of Experiential Transformation Therapy, a Single-Session Study. The publication process is currently in progress, contingent upon the publication of Hatcher's Theory of Human Experiencing and the peer review process. Training materials for experiential transformation therapy are currently under development and will be made public and live in 2025. If you have any questions, would like to be added to the waiting list for training, or would like to collaborate on research-related opportunities, please feel free to email me at info@cfipsy.org.